It is not an exaggeration to say that among the tens of millions of people who did not vote for Donald Trump, there is a sense of apprehension, even fear. One of those stories is here in McKinney, Texas. As she took the stage to give her valedictorian speech last June,
I'd like to offer you a different kind of speech.
19-year-old Larissa Martinez was on top of the world, headed to Yale University on a full scholarship. But she felt it important to let her classmates and eventually the country in on her biggest secret.
On July 11th, it will be exactly 6 years since I moved to McKinney from Mexico City, where I was born and raised. I am one of the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the shadows of the United States.
Why did you decide to come out so publicly and in that moment? What was the thinking?
Well, the way I saw it was that maybe I could change people's minds. I didn't want them to think that all we are rapists and criminals, because that's not true.
Her immigration status was not an issue for Yale, but it was for some people on Twitter.
Larissa Martinez is not brave or strong. She is a thief, and there is only one way to deal with thieves like her. And then they posted this picture. You have to go back.
Now, Larissa is worried because by coming out of the shadows, she has exposed her 11-year-old sister Andrea and their mother. In 2010, all three flew to Texas on tourist visas, fleeing, their mom says, an abusive husband. No wall would have stopped them. They simply stayed here illegally and since then have behaved pretty much like everyone else.
And I pay my taxes and I do everything we have to do. We are not bad. We just want to have like a happy, safe life.
Larissa and her sister have applied for juvenile immigration visas, but the girls and their mother can be deported at any time.
I believe that everything we build day by day can be gone like this.
You're really worried.
Yes.
You don't know what the future holds.
No.
What kind of America do you hope to grow up in?
I want to be in America where things like hating people for their race won't exist, and everybody's able to get along with each other.
I just want it to be nice and quiet so everybody could have their own chance.
I want to become an American. That dream hasn't died yet.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's pledge late last month to withdraw some forces from Syria, Fox News has learned the opposite is taking place now. In the past 2 weeks, Russia has sent 24 T-55 battle tanks, 4 Su-25 attack jets, 15 housing units, and hundreds of artillery rounds into Syria. But Russia is not the only country deploying forces. National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin has the latest from the Pentagon on what the U.S. military is sending to Europe.
It's the first time U.S. troops have been stationed in Norway since World War II. 300 U.S. Marines arrived Monday to begin winter training with a NATO ally that shares an Arctic border with Russia. Last week, 3,500 American soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division deployed to Poland to ease European allied concerns about Russian expansion. At the Atlantic Council today, in her last remarks as UN ambassador, Samantha Power accused Russia of tearing down the current world order.
For years, we have seen Russia take one aggressive and destabilizing action after another.
General James Mattis, the nominee for Defense Secretary, testified during his confirmation hearing last week that Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to break NATO.
NATO, from my perspective, having served once as a NATO Supreme Allied Commander, is the most successful military alliance probably in modern world history, maybe ever.
A view at odds with that of President-elect Donald Trump, who told European newspapers Sunday, quote, "I said a long time ago that NATO had problems. Number one, it was obsolete because it was designed many, many years ago. Number two, the countries weren't paying what they're supposed to pay." Last year, Russia questioned another NATO training exercise in Norway. 16,000 troops from 12 countries took part in cold cold response, the largest winter exercise since Soviet times. When U.S. soldiers arrived in Poland last week, the U.S. ambassador had a clear message.
This force embodies America's ironclad commitment to honor our NATO treaty obligation to defend our NATO allies.
President-elect Trump has said the U.S. will no longer foot the bill for NATO. Only 5 of the 28 members spend the required 2% of GDP on their defense budgets, an issue first raised by U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you.
While overseas, a desperate search for survivors is now underway in central Italy after a massive avalanche buried a hotel at a luxury ski resort. Authorities believe that dozens of guests and workers are still buried beneath the snow, some of which have, in fact, sent text messages to family members begging for help. CBS News foreign correspondent Alan Pizzi is on the phone with me now from Rome with more. And Alan, what can you tell us about the rescue efforts at this hour?
Well, at the moment, they're trying to get in there. The rescuers did get in about 4:50 this morning. Some specialist alpine troops on skis managed to get in and start digging into this destroyed hotel. One report said the whole hotel was moved about 30-odd feet by the force of the avalanche. Now, it struck in the early evening, we think on Wednesday, yesterday. Snowplows had been called in to try to get the way cleared even before the avalanche because there's been what were described as historically heavy snowfall, so the road was blocked, the people were trapped anyway. The latest news coming out on Italian radio is that 4 bodies have been recovered, 4 survivors have been pulled out, leaving, they think, 27 people or bodies still trapped inside this hotel. One of the text messages that came out to rescuers fairly early on just said, "Help, we are dying of the cold." And that's probably pretty accurate because the temperatures have been well below freezing up there. It's been snowing for days. This is an area that was already hit by earthquakes and aftershocks. There was a big one yesterday, 4 major good-sized quakes on Wednesday, which may have been what triggered the avalanche. Right now, there's a rescue operation in progress, but we're being told in some instances having to dig with shovels in their hands because of the amount of snow that came down on this 3-story hotel that's just virtually been buried.
And as we saw, Alan, in the aftermath of the devastating and deadly earthquake that struck Amatrice, the remote quality of these towns do make rescue efforts especially difficult. How difficult, how removed really is this hotel, and how common are avalanches in this region?
Avalanches are more common in the spring when the snow starts to get loose and break up. But as I said, there were major earthquakes and aftershocks in the area. Some felt as far away as Rome, so that is probably what triggered the avalanche. Now, as far as we know from looking at the maps and so on, and what we're hearing is that there's basically one road into this hotel. It's a 5-star hotel in a very remote area of what's called the Gran Sasso. It's a stunningly beautiful area, very popular with tourists. And the snowplows had been called in to try to clear the road because of extremely heavy snow that blocked it. They were cut off even before the avalanche, and then the rescue workers simply couldn't get there because of the heavy snow. So it's not an area where you can just wander in and wander out again. There have been police helicopters in the air, and the pictures that are coming down show absolute devastation.
And the same pictures, again, that we are looking at as you're speaking, Alan, also speak to just the depth of that snowpack. It does appear in places that it, in fact, rises above the snowplows brought in to clear it. Alan Pizzi there in Rome. I know you'll be covering this for us throughout the day here at CBSN. Alan, we do appreciate it.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Several blocks off the parade route, anti-Trump protesters turned destructive and violent. More than 200 people were arrested and at least 6 police officers were injured. Chip Reed has more on this.
Protesters dressed in black, some wearing masks, moved through downtown streets, setting fires, smashing storefront windows, some fighting with police. Officers dressed in riot gear responded with pepper spray and stun grenades. Closer to the Capitol building, members of the Black Lives Matter movement chained themselves together, blocking an entrance to the National Mall. Several Trump supporters scuffled with the group. Members of the LGBTQ community sang and danced as they blocked another security entrance. Ceci Blanchard traveled from Poughkeepsie, New York to protest.
That they also should be challenged. They shouldn't just be allowed a free pass into this. They have to be making an active decision. This just can't be like a fun event for them. They have to see the people they're hurting.
Nearly 24 groups received permits to protest in Washington today, but around the country in San Francisco, Houston, and Boston, groups also gathered to show their opposition to President Trump.
Hell no, no Trump!
Sam Ager came to D.C. with a group of hotel workers.
I think it's going to be 4 years of constant battling. I'm not a fan of this new administration at all. Donald Trump has shown time and time again that he doesn't care about working people in this country.
At one point during the parade, President Trump, the First Lady, and their son Barron got out of the car and walked, but Scott, as they approached a large group of protesters, a Secret Service agent tapped the president on the back. That was the signal to return to the safety of their armored limousine.
Chip Reed along the parade route for us. Chip, thank you.
Hundreds began to protest in Brussels city centre at exactly the same time as Donald Trump was being sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. They opposed Trump because during his election campaign he said he would ban all Muslims entering the US, and he also talked about deporting millions of immigrants.
I find it very important that human rights stand out and that we make sure that Trump does not get his way and does not shut out people from America and does not make immigrants move back.
Trump is dangerous, very dangerous. We don't know what he will do.
The Brussels protest aimed to remind people that Trump appeared to encourage violence during his election rallies. And of course it is well known that he has made lewd comments about women.
He has shown that he degrades women to sexual objects. He doesn't show a great deal of respect towards women.
We have a lot of important issues: climate change, obviously women's issues, migration, refugees, and if we continue to be divided, then we're not going to find proper solutions to these problems.
The event was organised by several non-profit organisations which called it Lights for Rights. In addition to all the other things, protesters were upset that Trump appeared to mock a man with special needs during his election campaign.
Now in America there is a fascist regime going on the power, and we are here to stop it.
Everything that he says and all the lies that he tells is just incredible, that people still believe him, and that he's now, well, in one of the most powerful positions on earth.
There is much speculation, but at this stage no one really knows what impact this new administration in the US will have. The big concern for these protesters is that Trump's attitudes will be embraced by a growing number of EU citizens. That would pave the way for far-right political parties to take power. What could ultimately happen after that is anyone's guess. Jerome Hughes, Press TV, Brussels.
Tomorrow, about 200,000 people are expected to descend on Washington for a massive women's march. 61% of Americans in a CBS News poll out this week say that Mr. Trump will divide the country. Peter Van Sant shows us how the harsh rhetoric of the campaign has caused anxiety and fear.
Just 25 miles from the nation's capital, a group of 10 and 11-year-olds have been thinking a lot about this day.
Tell me your feelings today. Donald Trump has been inaugurated as President of the United States.
I actually feel really scared, but I try not to think about it.
I think it's different now since Donald Trump's president. I think there has
been an increase of racist people.
In the last year, I've heard people who said things that I won't say because I know I can't say them, and I know even if I could say them, I wouldn't.
Many adults would agree and argue that during the presidential campaign,
when Mexico sends its people, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Donald Trump's blunt talk unleashed a crude side of our American identity that some thought was buried in our past.
We have to have a temporary ban on Muslims coming into this country. I'm sorry.
And all this tough talk has certainly been noticed by these fifth graders here at the Stedwick Elementary School in Montgomery County, Maryland. They represent the diversity that is the United States. Lynn's mother is from the African nation of Togo. Giovanni's parents are from Nicaragua and Peru.
Now that we have a new president, people are like thinking wrong and like doing stuff better.
Nora's parents came here from Indonesia.
When I heard Donald Trump first became elected, I felt a bit shook.
Perry's mom and dad are from Cameroon.
I'm scared someday he's gonna do what he said, and he's gonna take people away.
Even Brian is worried, and his parents are from Maryland.
The things he said about other people is not what a president should say.
I had overheard students talking about negative things that they had heard about Mexicans. And in my classroom, I actually had Mexican students.
Teacher Melinda Moye asked her students to write poems about what they'd heard people saying about them. Poems that were turned into this short video called The Lie.
The lie. Muslims are terrorists.
All black people are thieves. People from Mexico bring nothing good.
Latinos can't speak English well. All of the words in the film are their own. It's what they wanted to share and what they wanted others to know.
Give me a sense of when you watched The Lie for the first time.
I broke into tears, and I'd heard the entire poetry presentation how many times?
Peggy Pastor is the school principal. Her son Kevin, a professional filmmaker, produced the video.
You should know, not all Muslims are terrorists. When my dad pulls up the news and I just hear Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are bad, I just feel really heartbroken.
It makes me kind of angry, and I really just want to stand up for them. But like, it's really hard to, because, you know, I'm just like a small person in a big world.
The sad truth is that Montgomery County has seen an epidemic of hate incidents in the past year.
We saw about a 32% increase from last year. And the increase occurred right after the election.
County Police Chief Tom Manger.
But for some folks, this notion of civility has just gone out the window. And these folks feel empowered now to say and do hateful things.
Days after the election, at the predominantly immigrant Episcopal Church of Our Savior in nearby Silver Spring, this graffiti appeared. Robert Harvey is the rector.
One little boy came up to me after this 10 o'clock service was over, and he looked right at that message that was written on the brick wall, Trump Nation Whites Only, and he said, "Is this the way it's going to be now?"